Hey, okay, so welcome to Best to Test, using experiments to create validated learning. My name is Steve Dougan, and if you haven't met me already, I'm Head of Enterprise at Teesside University. I'm recording this session for you because I'm on holiday when you would have normally been spending the day with me doing this workshop. So I thought I'd record something for you, make it available for you, and then when we get back together, we can catch up and I can give you any feedback or support that I can one-to-one. But this is the next best we can do to having you in the room with me in Launchpad. And this topic is, for me, one of the most important aspects of going through the Fuel program. Starting a business in itself as a process is relatively easy. Getting business cards, getting a URL, finding and creating a website, all that stuff is really interesting and exciting. Even sourcing and finding products or creating and developing services, it's all really exciting. But the most important thing for us to understand as entrepreneurs is that we're not building this stuff for ourselves, we're building it for our customers. And we have to be pretty sure before we commit too much time, resource, energy, emotion, that we're building the stuff we're building for somebody, and that we know who that person is, we understand them intimately as a customer, and we're pretty sure, we're kind of 85% sure that if we were to put this thing, whatever it is, a product or a service, in front of them and offer them the value proposition we've created, so please buy from me X in exchange for Y number of pounds and pence, that they would do what we expect them to do and buy. We need to be fairly sure that that's going to happen. So in this session, we're going to understand how you can test your business assumptions with real customers before you invest time and money on product development, and before you begin to apply it to your idea or vision. We'll help you to create some of the experiments and so on that you need to be able to validate with real customers that your product or service solution really is what they want and what they need. I love this cartoon, and this sums up, really where we often get to. You can see there it's a kind of business meeting, and before we get to our risky assumptions that could crater our entire business, what do you think of the font color on this packaging burst? We tend to focus on the stuff that makes us happy, the stuff that is fun, the stuff that is easy. And the last thing we want to do with our new startup idea is to really test it and see whether or not it's valid, because that's quite a big ask. You've invested quite a lot of emotional energy into it. It's your idea. You believe in it. So we often pursue all the stuff around the edges before we even get down to whether or not we should make this business. And what we mean by risky assumptions, we'll come on to later. It's a term that you're going to become quite familiar with as you go through the Fuel program. And you'll always be challenged on whether something is fact or whether it is in fact just an assumption that you've made, a guess that you've made. This is perhaps the riskiest business strategy of all. If you build it, they will come. And I've heard this so many times. And I've heard people speak like this so many times. Often they're carried away with the technology. They're carried away with the incredible innovation that they're bringing to bear on a particular problem. It's a really risky thing to do, to build a whole thing. In other words, to invest money, time, making it perfect, getting to alpha, making this perfect thing in the hope that people are going to see it, identify it as meeting their needs and rush towards it and buy it. Well, they'd have to, wouldn't they? Because at this stage, if that's your strategy, build it and they will come. You've already put everything in. You're not just knee deep in this, you are up to the shoulders deep in this. And it's very difficult to step back from it when you've invested so much to build perfect. So this workshop really is about the opposite of this. It's not about building perfect. It's about building imperfect, building very cost effective, fast, cheap ideas, prototypes that you can validate very quickly and see whether they stick with customers. The other thing I hate hearing consultants say, or anyone, mentors, coaches, whoever say, sounds like a great idea. This is something I hear friends and family say all the time to people, and it's massively risky. The only way that you know something is a good idea or not is if you've validated it with customers. And if they've stood in front of you, looked at the thing you've got and said, yep, that's exactly what we need. It solves problem X, it solves problem Y. And if you don't have that data, if you don't know, then you just don't know. So it sounds like a great idea is massively risky, because it sounds like a good idea based on what data, based on what learning, based on what facts, based on what insights. It's super risky. And you can see how this plays out in the real world. They're a slightly unfair comparison because they're very different scenarios, very different contexts. But top left, you may or may not be old enough to remember Sir Clive Sinclair, the guy driving the vehicle there. A genius, you know, created the ZX Spectrum computer that revolutionized home computing. It was my first computer, and perhaps nearly everyone I know that's currently running a business in Tees Valley would look at Sir Clive and kind of say, thanks, Clive, you know, thank you, Sir Clive Sinclair, for making the Spectrum and introducing me to the world of technology. So he was an amazing pioneer, and he made millions from electronic calculators, electronic watches. He was a real pioneer, but he had that real risky problem, which is he's got lots of money, he's got lots of influence. If he wants to do something, there aren't that many people telling him not to. And so he can take an idea, and however unvalidated it is, he can pursue it with time and energy and money. And that's what he did with the vehicle you can see on the screen, the Sinclair C5. It was way ahead of its time as an affordable electric vehicle. But of course, the battery technology of the time and the motor technology of the time meant the biggest vehicle you could hope to build to drive around in that would last a reasonable length of time was this size of vehicle. Putting an electric motor into a car was just absolutely impossible at the time. The batteries would never have been able to power it and last long enough to go any kind of distance. So he ended up making this kind of plastic trike with handlebars under your legs that you steered with. It had no weather protection, really, certainly no crash protection. It was slow. It had pedals in it too, so that if you wanted to go up a hill, you had to pedal. It was a very strange product. But he put millions and millions of pounds into it, and he even contracted the Hoover vacuum cleaner factory to make them. And he produced them. He started to manufacture them, and it was a huge financial disaster for Sir Clive. They just didn't sell because there really wasn't a customer for them. You know, if you were going to work, you couldn't go to work and get wet driving it, riding it. If you were 16, 17, your parents would probably look at it and think, oh my God, what if you get hit by a bus or a car or a truck or whatever? It just had so many limitations and barriers, but most of all, it didn't have any clearly defined customer for whom it had been built. And there certainly was very little consumer or customer input into its creation or design. So Clive wanted things to be a product. He made it into a product, and it did what many products like that follow that build it and they will come strategy. It ended up sat in a warehouse in boxes unsold because it just didn't solve anybody's problem. It just didn't address anybody's needs. And the other example is a bit different. This is Google Glasses. And you may have seen this on the news back in the day. Google decided to put quite a bit of money into, as they often do. Google are quite brave with their experiments. They'll certainly invest millions of dollars into something and then see what happens. And that's what they did with Google Glasses. They wanted to find out whether people would accept technology that augmented regular eyewear. And they put a really refined product out there to see what people's reactions would be. And the public responded in a way that I think they probably didn't predict, which was they weren't so much rejecting the technology, they were more rejecting the morality of it and the invasion of privacy of it, in that you could record everything in front of you. And when you were speaking to people, you could be recording the conversation. And the lens you can see on the device there, that's just the other side of the glasses, it provides data and information on the weather and shop opening times and directions and so on, which you can then view through the lens. But the public did not take to the concept at all, and it generated quite a lot of negative press. And Google learned quite quickly, and for them, for a fairly limited amount of money, a huge amount of money for anyone else, but for Google, quite a small amount of money, that it wasn't the right time for this product, or it wasn't the right way to augment human beings. They didn't want to wear the technology in this way. And so they withdrew the product from the marketplace. But it was, of course, always meant as an experiment. It was always meant to see what would happen in the real world with real customers when we give them this technology. And invariably, customers never behave in the way that you expect them to. That great Mike Tyson quote, which is, everyone's got a plan to fight me until I punch them in the face. And at that point, you really are then pivoting, experimenting, iterating to try and find what the right path is. And lots of products are like this. You've got to put out an imperfect version because you can't afford to invest millions of pounds like Sir Clive did and like Google did. So you've got to kind of think, I'm going to have to put my product out there quite early, before it's ready, before it's polished, before it's perfect. Because you know what? I might be polishing something that's not right. I might be investing too much time and effort in a version of my product that really isn't needed or wanted in the real world. And much of this thinking, came about because we had some great new models enter into the startup entrepreneurship dialogue. Eric Ries and many others started to write about a concept called lean startup. And this was to think of startups through a very different lens. And you can see a great quote there from Eric. The goal of a startup is to figure out the right thing to build, the thing customers want and will pay for as quickly as possible. So a startup's goal, a purpose, is not to sell products. That's what makes it a startup. Its purpose is to try and figure out what should we make. Because we might have version 1.0 of our product or service, but it's unlikely to remain the same once we expose it to customers. And a startup's journey is to quickly iterate and improve a product or service before you've run out of money, based on customer feedback and intelligence, up until the point you feel you have something worth launching. And that iterative process where you're getting feedback, improving, getting feedback, improving, getting feedback, improving, the longer you can do that for without running out of money, the bigger the chance that you have of launching a product or service that the public react to, that customers love and are willing to exchange their hard-earned dollar for. Whether that's a consumer product or a business product, it doesn't matter whether it's B2C or B2B, it's exactly the same concept. Startups are all about experimentation. They're all about trying things out until we think we've got something worth building, and then we build it and sell it. And a good way to help us do that, I've sent you, or more accurately, Lizzie has sent you a PDF. It's called the AdLib Value Proposition Template. And it's a challenge, this is a really difficult document to complete. But I want you in a few minutes to pause this video and go and print out a copy of this PDF and have a go at completing it. And this PDF gets you to really, in very few words, explain what it is that your business is about. And it gets you to do that through the lens of a customer. Our product or service helps this group of customers who want to do these things, and it helps them by doing this and this, and reducing or removing this and this, unlike our competitors who do this. So to go through that one more time, and of course you can read it at your leisure once you've paused this video and printed it out. Our product or service, and that could be anything. It could be a chair, it could be a software service, it could be consultancy, it could be sound production, it could be almost anything. Our product or service helps, and then we need to redefine who we think our customer groups are. And if we're serving more than one customer group, we need more than one of these sheets. So this could be our product or service helps under 35 tech-enabled travelers, or our product or service helps tech-aware eco warriors under the age of 30. So who is it that you're aiming this product at? And the answer, if you put in that box, by the way, everyone, is really difficult, because marketing and selling things to everyone is really expensive. So our product or service helps who? The customer. Who want to do what? This is a different way of thinking about products and services. This is about, what does our product or service help the customer do? And we must think about the things that we sell in terms of helping customers do things. If we sell team management software, then it's customers who want to manage their teams more efficiently. It's people who want to extract more productivity from their people. It's people who want to have less time wasted on administration and bureaucracy. So we have to be able to very clearly say that our service helps these people who want to do these things. And we call these things jobs. Whether it's consumers or business customers, products and services help us get jobs done. Things we want to tick off the list. A chair, an obvious job, might very well be comfortable. But it could also be something like appear to be aspirational, appear to be wealthy. We often buy things just to show off. And lots of consumer products are like that, right? So what is it our customer is trying to get done, trying to achieve by buying our product or service? And then, well, how does it help them do that? By doing what? So in that buy section, we mean buy what? And we're looking for positive verbs. Positive verbs that describe things like increasing, maximizing, avoiding, verbs that describe taking away all the pains and concerns that a customer might have. And then the and statement is with another verb like increasing, enabling. So the first bit, by, is nearly always making something better, making something less slow, less boring, less uncomfortable. And the and statement is nearly always adding stuff in that's already good by making things more comfortable, more efficient. So we always try to phrase benefits in both terms, negative and positive, taking pains away, adding gains in. And then unlike this other way of doing it that they're doing now, because most of our customers are already doing something to meet their needs. They're not just sitting around waiting for a product before they start doing something. They're doing it, but they're doing it imperfectly. They're doing it, but they're doing it in a way that pisses them off. So we need to be able to say, we do this unlike this current way of doing it. So on the next slide, you'll see it says to pause the video, please do, and then go away and have a go at filling out your AdLib value proposition template. And I'll check in on these when I get back from annual leave and see how you've got on. If you need any help completing it, because it's tricky, there are a number of things you can do. You can Google AdLib value proposition template, and you'll no doubt find YouTube videos available from Strategizer, which I'm sure you will. Or you can pick up the phone or email Lizzie and ask her to drop on a call with you and give you some help. So click pause in the video, go away and have a go, and I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so you've had a go at doing your AdLib value proposition template, and it's a good time now to take a look at this process and lay the process out on screen. What are we talking about when we talk about startups and how they go through a process of figuring out whether they're making or doing the right things? Well, there are two phases to being in a new business. The first is called search, and the second is called execute. And in my experience of working with new businesses for 15 plus years, most of those that I come across are already trying to operate in that execute box. They've built something, they've built some branding for it, and they're out there trying to win customers. They're trying to do this customer creation piece. They're trying to sell the thing that they've developed or made to their customers with varying degrees of success. And of course, to make this execution process more likely to succeed, we really should step back and spend more time in this search box, because the search box is more about customer discovery and customer validation than it is about selling. We need to spend a bit of time figuring out whether or not we know what it is our customers want to buy, and whether or not the thing we're making or trying to bring to life in our startup is actually the thing that they want and not just something that we want to bring to life. So customer discovery means, who are my customers and how can I start to communicate with them? So you have to be very clear about who your customer segment is. For whom am I creating value? And that could be different groups of customers for different reasons. If we look at a company, for example, like Uber, Uber have two very distinct customer groups, at least to begin with they did. They had travellers, the person who gets in the ride and rides in the Uber, and they have drivers, the person who provides the driving service. And Uber exists to create value for both those groups of people. For the traveller, the person riding in the Uber, they create an optimum experience, much better than a regular cab. It's easier to book, it's cheaper, you're more certain about who's picking you up, what they're called, what kind of car they're in, and you know the route you're going to go on and how much it will cost before you even get in the car. You don't have to fiddle on with payment in the car. You just get in the car, ride, get out the car, done. Super easy. For the drivers, well, to begin with, they were helping people turn their vehicles that they already own into ways of making money on the side. So the driver could essentially leverage the value of their vehicle and become a taxi driver when they wanted to. And when they didn't want to, they could just turn it off and spend time with their family or do their day job. So this was taking all those millions of cars out there that spend too much time on driveways and turning them into really useful vehicles, taking people from A to B. A brilliant business model, superb, because they create value for many more different groups of people now as their business has created more and more different value propositions. Uber Eats, for example, delivering food. In that case, it's still the same driver, actually, customer group, but there's a new customer group, hungry at home or hungry at work, and they just want someone to go and pick the food up and bring it to them. Anyway, so in customer discovery, you've got to be able to say, who am I creating value for? Who is it that benefits from my product or service? And maybe put them into distinct groups. Think about who you create value for. And then the customer validation piece is where we actually take our product or service and we try positioning it in front of those customer groups. And what we're looking for is validation. Do they behave in the way that we would expect them to? Do they click on a link? Do they email us? Do they pick up the phone and ring us? Do they sign up online for a form? Do they buy a product very early from a platform like Amazon or eBay or Etsy or not on the high street or wherever we position it to begin with? So do customers behave in the way that we'd expect them to? And if they don't, if we don't get that behavior, we need to stop, figure out why, and pivot. A pivot is a slight change in direction based on customer feedback, based on customer insights, the things that customers tell us. And we can then go back and think, right, let's just refine that and try that again. Maybe it's not the right customer. Maybe it's not the right color. Maybe it's not the right price point. Maybe it's not the right channel we're trying to sell through. So in this search phase, we're trying to figure out, how does this business work? Have we got the product right? Have we got the channels to market right? Have we got the branding and messaging right? Have we even chosen the right customer segment to sell to? And we're spinning this all the time using experiments. And only when we're really sure that we can put the right product in front of the customer through the right channels and they behave in a way that is predictable and is the way we want them to, do we move on to execute and start to really focus on customer creation. And the customer creation journey expands out when we get enough customers, we start to build a company and we start to build capacity by hiring people who do much of the do that we used to do. So that's the journey that most businesses follow. And it's proved to be an extremely robust model. So there are 4 steps for validating an idea, 4 steps for completing that first section, that search section. With our product or service, we need to decide, what do we want to learn about it? What goals have we got? Should we validate the market, the problem itself? Does the customer have a problem? Do they know they have a problem? Or the product, is the product right? Is it the right shape, size, cost? Does it fit in with what they do already? Is it compatible with their existing processes? Is it the right product? So we need to decide, what is it we want to learn about? What is it we want to prove? And then we need to find out what guesses have we made? In other words, what are the most critical assumptions that we are basing our idea upon? And how can we test those? What would good look like? What would successful look like? to prove our hypotheses. And a hypothesis is just a statement. It's just a statement that says this has to be true in order for our business to be viable. And I'm going to share a good example of this with you in a second from Airbnb. And if we're going to test the hypotheses, what would pass look like? What would fail look like? So to pass, we need a minimum success criteria. And that could be something as basic as of 100 people surveyed, we need 80 to agree with the statement that we need them to agree with in order to validate our business. Or we go to a market stall situation, maybe at a festival like Innocent Drinks did. We put out our drinks like Innocent did, and we have a bin with I'd buy it and a bin I don't like it, and the empty cups from our smoothies go into one of those two bins. I mean, their hypothesis was that people would love healthy, high quality smoothies in the way that they had crafted them, in the way that they had created them. And people would either like them or they wouldn't. I mean, there wasn't really anything, their target demographic was young people, under the age of 40, high disposable income because their product was never going to be cheap. And they found lots of those people at Glastonbury. And they put two bins, and basically yes and no bin. And I think the question was that they asked quite controversially, should we quit our jobs to make this smoothie? And that's daring, isn't it, right? And they served up these smoothies, and when people finished, they threw their cups into the bin. And of course, we all know they got many more cups in the yes, you should quit your jobs bin because we love the smoothie than they did the other bin. But that's a great experiment. And experiments then are just methods we use to test our assumptions. And I'm going to cover off some of these different experiment types with you and give you some good examples in a few slides' time. So experiments are just, we think this is true, or we hope it's true, because if it isn't, our business cannot function. We think this is true. We're going to go out there and test it without spending too much money or time. So experiments need to be quite contained, but give us good data. And if this works, and we can then decide, is our assumption valid? Yes, continue. Is our assumption invalid? It's invalid. Pivot, make a change, try the experiment again. It's just like a scientist in the lab trying different combinations of chemicals to get the reaction they want. They carry out an experiment, carefully noting what they did, the method. They're trying to prove a hypothesis. If I mix chemicals A, B, and C, I'll get this result, which is Z. That either happens or it doesn't. When it doesn't, they note down why they think it didn't, and they go back and try it again. And they keep doing that until they get a valid experiment. The thing goes bang, or it changes color, whatever their minimum success criteria for that experiment was. So the first thing to do is define your goal. Are you trying to figure out whether customers have the problem you think they have? And if they do, is it worth them spending money and time solving it? Is your solution something they're going to accept? Is the solution right? Excuse me. In other words, is the product right? Are the features right? Does it have enough features? Too many features? Is it too simple? Too complex? Is the business model right? Can we make money using this business model? And if we can, is it scalable? Is the price right? Are we charging too much, too little? There's lots of different things you can set out to prove. And you've got to decide where you think you know the least about your business. Where you know the least about your business. And that's where likely you're going to have made the most unvalidated assumptions. Maybe you don't know, for example, really what the price point should be. You're pretty sure everything else is bang on. Customers definitely have the problem. You've got data for that. You've got interviews for that. You've got real evidence for that. The solution is exactly the right fit. It fits the problem perfectly. And you know because you've tried it. You've tested it. The features are bang on. Not too much, not too simple, really, really quite nice. Customers just, yes, that's exactly what we want to begin with. And the business model, you've worked it over and you're pretty sure it's going to make money, but you're not sure whether you're underselling on the price. Well, if that was the case, you'd build a price-based experiment and you would try different price points in the marketplace to see which ones got different results or different reactions from customers. So you can choose any one of these areas to build experiments around. The key thing here, though, is to start with a really good hypothesis, which is always based on the most risky, critical assumption, the one that if we're wrong, we're just doomed, right? And a good example of this is Airbnb. They based their entire business model on two big assumptions. And if they were wrong, they were toast. People are willing to stay at a stranger's house, they assumed. Homeowners are willing to rent out their homes for strangers, they assumed. If these two things proved true, the Airbnb business model as it was at the beginning would work really well. But if either of these things was wrong, their business model would fail. They had to know whether or not people were willing to stay at something that wasn't a hotel or a B&B. They had to make sure people were willing to let property that they owned, whether that was a room or a whole house or to people they've never met before. Would they feel comfortable doing that? Would they feel confident in doing that? If these were wrong, then the Airbnb business model is wrong. So that's a good example, I think, pretty clear example. So you've got to understand what your stranger's house is for your business. What is it about your business that has to be right? And sometimes that can be something brutal, like, will they buy this service from a business that's less than 12 months old? Or will they buy this product from a business that doesn't have a turnover in excess of X? Because sometimes you'll find actually the most brutal, critical assumption we've made is that a startup can sell this product. If, for example, your target customer is government, or your target customer is the NHS, or your target customer are large corporates, they are very risk averse when it comes to procurement. And the hypotheses that you might want to test is, do they buy these things from companies like mine? Because if they don't, if they're prevented from buying software, let's say, from a startup by their own rules, you can't sell to them. You can't get them to change the rules. Or you could, but it'd be very difficult to do, very expensive to do. You know, so you could have created the most amazing innovation for a pillow or whatever for a hospital, but unless you know that you as a very small startup business with no proven track record could be able to get on that suppliers list for the NHS, then you're not going to be able to get that pillow to market that way. And so you might have to pivot the idea, and maybe you just own the idea for the pillow and you let someone else make it and sell it who already has a contract with the NHS. So sometimes, you know, it's very rarely ever a dead end if your hypothesis doesn't work out. You just need to pivot the idea in some way to get it to fit. So again, I'd like you to spend a bit of time thinking about what you think your critical assumptions might be. And remember that every new idea is basically a faith-based thing. And underneath it, the foundations of it are just these Jenga block-like assumptions. And as you pull each Jenga block out, it can get quite wobbly, but it's fine because you can go and you can make amendments, you can make changes. You need to challenge any assumptions you have in your business model right from the get-go. Don't wait until you spent too much time and money. And this means that you really need to understand what assumptions you're making and rank them in order of priority. So what I'd like you to do is to pause the video in a second and grab yourself a sheet of paper and list out all the things on a sheet of paper that you think are assumptions that you've made that are not based on real good quality evidence. Things that if you were to get them wrong, if you're wrong about this, your business is toast. And then I'd like you to rank them in order of most important. Which ones do you think are the ones that you should focus on? And a good way of doing this actually is to think about them in terms of which ones are really quite likely to be wrong. You know, which ones do I know the least about? And also, which of those is really, if it's wrong, massively impactful? So you might have something where I don't know much about this. It probably is an assumption, but if I've got it wrong, it's not going to really do a great deal of harm. Fine, bottom of the list. But if you have something where you look at it and think, I don't really know a great deal about this. I haven't spoken to enough customers. I haven't been out to meet enough clients. I haven't done enough stuff online. I haven't tried it on social media. I don't have enough data. And if I'm wrong, it's massively, massively impactful. Those are the ones that should be at the top of your list. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. So welcome back. And before you pause the video, we talked briefly about the likelihood of you being wrong and the impact it can have. This is a really nice chart that shows you that in action. And you can see the red zone there, top right-hand corner. Very likely you've got this wrong, and very high potential impact if you are wrong. And anything up there in that top right quadrant in terms of assumptions is where you should be spending most of your energy and time building experiments. If something is rarely, it's quite rare in terms of getting this wrong, and it's going to have very low impact on my business, then it's just not something to be concerned about. And sometimes we have things in there like, I'm not sure whether logo A or logo B is the right one. What would the impact of getting it wrong be? Well, given they're quite similar, very low. But you'll be surprised how much time people spend on 2 or 3 different logos, going around asking hundreds of people what they think about their logos, and just get on with it. There's probably things in your business that are massively more critical in terms of the assumptions you've made than whether logo A or logo B is right. So make sure that the things you design experiments for are worth experimenting on. And in terms of experiments, this is a really fun bit, I think, of a startup. You get to create these amazing, cheap, fast ways of testing your assumptions. And there are lots of really interesting ways of doing this. One of them is to build something called a minimal viable product. And I'll show you an example of this in a bit. Or it says there, minimal lovable product. A different way of thinking about it, because it can't be too rough and ready. It has to be something where it's a prototype, it's a cheap version of the thing that you want to build. It's imperfect by nature, but it has to be good enough to be a valid experiment. It's no good, because if you make it too rough and ready, too cheaply, it's not a true reflection of the product that you would make. Then you're not going to get really good data. People might dismiss it because it's just too elastic bands and paper clips. It's just not good enough. So an MVP needs to be good. It needs to be pretty good. A landing page is a great way of testing behavior. A landing page is a web page designed to very quickly present people with a value offer. We are doing this to help you achieve this. If you want to find out more, click here or give us your email address here. I like them because they give really good data on how many people landed, where they came from, how long they spend on the page, and of course the ultimate test is, did they give us their data? Did they give us their email address? Giving an email address on a landing page is not that far removed from giving cash for a product. So if you can build good landing pages, and we'll look at some in a moment, then I think you're not that far away from being able to sell your product. The next one is a physical prototype, something you can literally put into people's hands and they can touch and feel and use. If it was a kettle, it would be something you could put in the kitchen and see how it looks. You could maybe flick the switches. You could see how well it pours. You could open the lid, but it wouldn't be fully functional. It would be as near to as possible. Fake it till you make it, or Wizard of Oz, is where you appear to be about to launch. So the website is amazing. There's video footage on there. There are mock-ups on there. There's pricing on there. It looks like you're about to open next week. And you basically try to take customers in quite early and say, sign up now for an opening offer, sign up now for a discount at launch. And you could very well not even have a physical prototype. This could just all be 3D renders and mock-ups that make it look like you're pretty close to being ready to launch. There's nothing massively dishonest about doing this. Businesses do this all the time. It's just a way of seeing whether or not the engine of the business would turn even before you have product to sell. So you can build a store, put it online, put it in front of people, and see whether they press the button to buy, even though you don't have these things stacked up in a warehouse in boxes. It's fine. Much better to fail at that stage than to fail when you did have a warehouse stacked full of product in the background. You can carry out interviews and surveys, lots of platforms like SurveyMonkey out there to help you do that. Really nice way of doing it, but you need to really put some thought into how well you can write questions. If you're not very good at writing unbiased questions, you need to get some help, because you can very easily write interviews or surveys that just give you the answers that you're looking for. So you've got to be quite careful. And if you speak to Lizzie or anyone in the team, they can help you with that. You could be really brave and put out a crowdfunder like Kickstarter or Indiegogo And I'll show some examples of all of these in a bit. But this is really brave because you're putting this thing out there and saying, can you pre-order? Will you pre-order from me? It's not ready yet, and everyone knows that's how Kickstarter works and how Indiegogo works. Will you give me some money to help me bring this product to market? And if people love something enough, they will prepay for something, even though they're going to have to wait months and months and months to get it, or even understand that they may never get it if the Kickstarter fails. They'll get a refund, but they won't get the product or service they expected to receive. And then there's A/B tests. I like this too. A/B tests are really cool. You can build a website version A, website version B, landing page version A, landing page version B, Kickstarter version A, version B, physical prototype version A, version B. You're basically putting two different things in front of people and seeing which one they like. And in a very Darwinistic way, you start to delete out the weakest ones, and you start to learn actually what is it people are spotting that they like. The red one always gets through, or maybe red's the preferred color. So A/B tests are really good ways of getting to the right product or right service to sell. And if you are doing an experiment, you must know what good looks like. What would success look like? How do I know the experiment succeeded or failed? So you have to have a minimum success criteria. This many of something has to be reached before success can be claimed. But be careful, because you can get this wrong. So the example here is 8 people out of 10 would say they'd rather sleep in a hotel than on someone's couch. Does this mean that Airbnb's idea was invalidated? So 8 people out of 10 would rather sleep in a hotel than on someone's couch. Well, obviously it's a loaded question, isn't it? It's loaded in the favor of the hotel. And of course you'd rather sleep in a hotel than on someone's couch. So you've got to be very careful how you ask the questions, because they can give you either the answers you're looking for, or they can pre-program in answers that you'd rather not get. So if you're not good at writing these kinds of questions, you need to get someone to help you write them. Let's take a look at some examples of experiments. This is a business called Popcord, and what you can see here is a landing page. Popcord is selling a mobile phone battery product, and it snaps on to your keyring or laptop bag. It's just super portable, super light. You can kind of carry it with you everywhere. And what they're saying is, if this is you, ever run out of battery ? If you recognize this and think there's value in this, give us your email address and join the charging revolution. And they know from this landing page how many people landed on it, where they came from. Did they come from TikTok? Did they come from Facebook? Did they come from Insta? Where did they come from? So they know how successful their social media is. And they also know how many people arrived and how long they looked at the page for. And of course, the killer is they know how many people then gave them their email address. And if someone gives you an email address, it's very close to a sale. And the list that makes, lists are gold. Lists are like cash machines. If you can get someone's email address on a list, when the product's ready to sell, you can go back to them again and you can say, hey, we're ready. And there's a very high probability, that person is going to then execute on the sale and buy the thing from you. Otherwise, they would never have signed up in the first place to the email list. So lists are brilliant, and landing pages create really good quality marketing lists. Here's one more. This one's for Buffer. So Buffer tweets out for you automatically. And the first bit of the landing page, you can see at the top there, 1, 2, 3. This is what Buffer does. You can't get a simpler, more clean landing page than that one. 1, 2, 3. And then you can click on plans and pricing. And what they're measuring, of course, is how many people read those 3 things and then go, that's for me. Plans and pricing, please. And then it says, tweet more consistently with Buffer. Hello, you caught us before we're ready yet. Give us your email address, and when we're ready, we'll let you know. That's their first experiment. Because you know what? They haven't even got the plans and pricing sorted out yet. They don't know what to charge yet. What they're doing is trying to get a feel for who the customer is and how many people respond to these 3 value offers. And they may well have changed these 3 value offers many times to get the right version to increase the number of people who click on that plans and pricing button. Here's our next iteration. So they then released a much later landing page where they introduced some pricing. So when you clicked on plans and pricing, you actually got the plans and pricing page. And here they're looking for which people click on 0, 5 or 20, which is the most popular price plan. And again, you click on it and it says we're not quite ready yet. Give us your email address. Now they have 3 different lists potentially. Those who chose 0, those who chose £5, those who chose £20. They're starting to learn about people's preferences for pricing. And finally, here's one from Gary V. And Gary, obviously, amazing entrepreneur, and Gary set out, a controversial public speaker. I understand he's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people like him, some people hate him. Personally, I quite like him. I like what he's got to say. I don't always like the way he says it, but hey. So Gary's been super successful with many of his businesses, and here is winetext.com. This is buy wine by text message. So you don't have to put in an order form. All you do is you get sent a text message with the offer, and all you got to do is text back how many you want, and it automatically knows by your mobile number who you are, where to ship it to, and what card to bill. So it makes the buying process very quick by text message. And there's been a bit of a movement towards buy by text recently. So here you can see Gary's landing page is full on. You know, it asks you straight away, watch this video. If you like what you see, sign up. And it asks you for everything: email, cell phone, first name, address, everything, even card number, right in there for billing. So he's not messing about. If you like this value proposition enough from the video, you will complete that form and you will give me all your data. Very bold. Here is an MVP product. This is Bjorn Grace, a German student who was on the field program many years ago. And Bjorn's vision was Smoothie Cloud. And Smoothie Cloud was, in Bjorn's view, when you were traveling, if you were in a train station or airport lounge, or you're in a shopping mall, your choice of what to drink was limited really to, from vending machines, was limited really to coffee or Coke. So if you didn't want coffee or Coke, there wasn't really much choice in terms of what you could buy. So Bjorn's view was, why not offer a healthy vend in airport lobbies, in shopping malls, in train stations, so people aren't forced to just buy either Coke or coffee. And what Bjorn did is to build a minimal viable product version of a Smoothie Cloud machine. And the Smoothie Cloud offer was meant to be, you approach the machine, you put some money in, and you basically use a screen, a touch screen, to mix your smoothie. So you could have, it's a cool idea, isn't it? You could have mango, orange, you could put in some seeds even to give it some protein. You could do all kinds of different things on the screen, and the machine inside would whiz away and make the smoothie and dispense it for you. Beautiful. Fresh fruit inside and chilled, and a Wi-Fi connection so it could order a stock to replenish itself when it was empty. It could let people know it needed to clean. It could let people know it needed maintenance. Very cool, very cool. And Bjorn was a brilliant engineer, and he had some money too. He had 30 grand to invest in a full prototype being made if he wanted to in the Czech Republic. Thank God he didn't invest that money. Excuse me, as you'll see in a second. So Bjorn put this Smoothie Cloud machine, or mock-up, which is essentially what you're looking at on the screen now, is a cardboard mock-up with an iPad stuck in there with a mock-up of the interface, working mock-up. And hidden inside the machine is Bjorn. What Bjorn was looking for is in a shopping mall scenario, and on an airport, in an airport lounge, and on a train station, how many people would walk past the machine and stop and look at it? How many people would stop and look at it and approach the machine? And finally, how many people would stop, look at it, approach the machine, and touch the screen? And if they would touch the screen, Bjorn would come out from behind the machine, scare the living hell out of them, and ask them a simple question. If this machine was real and you could mix your smoothie on the screen, would you pay £3 for a fresh smoothie? And this product concept did not validate. Not enough people were interested in paying £3 for a fresh smoothie. Not enough people stopped and approached and touched the screen, and not enough people stopped and looked at the machine. None of those experiments validated. The smoothie offer via a vending machine was just not something that they would accept. And in fact, when he spoke to customers in situ, their view was they'd rather buy a smoothie from a person who they could see making it than they would from a machine. And it might be that that changed over time, and we now happily buy bean to cup coffee from self vend machines in petrol stations, even though it's terrible coffee and it's a terrible product. We still pay for it. So it's coffee would have been something we would have expected to be made by a human, a barista, but we now happily buy coffee from vending machines. So maybe now that the coffee machine has become a thing that you happily use in a Costa machine or a Starbucks machine in the petrol station, you kind of use it, you kind of accept it's not as good, but you still pay for it. You still pay top dollar for it as well. Maybe now this smoothie concept would validate. Who knows? But Bjorn has moved on and is doing other things. But he didn't invest the 30k he had to build a physical machine, which would have just done exactly the same thing as his cardboard mock-up. He'd have got the same outcome. He would just have been 30 grand poorer. If you're making apps, you can even do this with apps. There are lots of amazing software available for iPhone and Android that allows you to put essentially pencil drawings or pen drawings into the software. So you can see here, Snapcat, chat with cats, sign up button. Someone's drawn this on a piece of paper and imaged it into the phone using a photograph. And then what the software lets you do is to put a hotspot over the sign-in icon. And now if I was to click that on the phone, it takes me to the next image that was drawn on paper, and so on and so forth. So you can basically, with nothing more complex than some Sharpies and some paper, you can draw out each screen of the app that you would be building. You can add some basic interactions into it. And what you end up with is a fairly good working prototype that gets the idea of an app across. It communicates what this would do if it were real. Really quite clever. And again, if you want to find out how to do this and where it's available, give Lizzie a shout and she'll help you out. This is a great site online. This lets you mock up any packaging you can think of. So you can basically upload your image and this online software will create a hyper realistic piece of packaging for you, whether it's a coffee bag or shopping bags or boxes, or it's brilliant because this makes it look like you've got a physical thing ready to ship. It looks amazing. This is great for Kickstarters. It's great for selling an idea before you have the actual product. And here's a Kickstarter for Whipper, paddle ski row. So Whipper is a portable cross-country ski and row machine. And you can take it to the office, you can take it on holiday with you, you can take it camping with you. Isn't that clever? And they created a video and a realistic mock-up and put this onto Kickstarter, and they raised $2.9 million from a goal of $25,000. Amazing response. So this absolutely validated on Kickstarter. Of course, you've still got to market the Kickstarter. You've still got to put the Kickstarter page in front of the right people. But then at least those people can go somewhere and they can pay. They know it's not ready yet, but they can prepay for that product before it's even ready to ship. So it's a brilliant way of validating something with real cash money if it's a physical product that you can easily mock up. So pause the video here and go off and spend a bit of time thinking about the kind of experiments that you might run for your business. How could you be beyond? How could you launch a Kickstarter? What could you do to put your thing, whatever it is, out there in the real world and see how customers react? Don't worry about losing or opening up your secret Pandora's box of innovation, because the likelihood is that most businesses we see here in the field program, you probably haven't got anything that's protectable anyway from an intellectual property point of view. Your thing probably isn't patentable. So the best thing you can do with it really is to validate it, get it out there, see whether people agree, and the chance of someone else being ready to take it and run with it are fairly low. So to kind of bring this to a close, this experimentation obviously produces results, and sometimes those results are positive, sometimes they're not. And the thing you've got to decide when you carry out experiments and you get the results is whether or not to continue as you are or make a pivot, change something. So are all of your riskiest assumptions validated? What did you learn? What did customers teach you about your product? What surprised you or shocked you? What did you get right? Keep doing it. What went wrong? Abandon it or modify it. Do you need to pivot, change direction? Either the product is wrong, the customer is the wrong customer, or the market's not right, the business model's not right, the pricing is not right. What was it that you need to think about and come back to with a new iterative version? And I like this chart because lots of startups begin in this kind of fantasy zone you can see in red, a zone which is devoid of customer input. It's at any scale. I'm not talking about 5 or 6 people or friends and family. They don't count. I mean, to get out of the fantasy zone, you have to start having conversations with real customers that you've never met before, that don't know you, but are the kind of people who would buy your product. And the more conversations you have with real customers, you get pulled out of the fantasy zone. And then you might do a paper test, where you kind of just put it down in paper, either on a PowerPoint or you put it on a video or you put it out there. Paper test is just, this is the idea. What do you think? You're getting more validation now. And then you might build a prototype and you get even more truth back from learning. And then the ultimate expression of that, of course, is a live product out there to either succeed or fail. And but you have to get out of the fantasy zone. You have to get away from just listening to yourself inside of your own soundbox, because the longer that goes on, the higher the likelihood is that you will never bring this product to market or sell it successfully. So try to get conversations beginning real quick with real customers, and they'll tell you stuff that you never thought of before. They'll tell you essentially what product or service to build. So your task now in the field program is to list and prioritize your assumptions, create some hypotheses for your riskiest assumptions, create some experiments to go and test those, and then set some minimum success criteria for those experiments and come back and let Lizzie and I know what happened. We did this to try and prove this, and this is what happened. And we learned these things, and that meant that we changed these things. That's kind of would be a brilliant conversation to have. So I hope this hasn't been too difficult to sit and listen to. I'd much rather be there with you face to face. And as you can hear, I've got the most horrific hay fever right now. So if I've sounded a bit sneezy or hoarse or coughed a few times, I apologise. But I blame the Great British pollen count. I'll see you all soon in Launchpad. I'll drop in to see how the field program's going. Take care. Any questions, let Lizzie know, and I'll see you on the other side. Cheers, guys. Bye.